Observer Velthor stood in the assignment chamber of the Galactic Council, his three-fingered hands clasped behind his back. The holographic display showed the image of a human vessel, a small military craft called the Defiant. He had been studying humanity for 6 cycles now, reading their history files and cultural databases. They seemed like a simple species, emotional and disorganized. This assignment would be easy. The council administrator, a tall being made of crystalline structures, spoke in the common language. You will observe their military operations for 1 standard month. Document their tactics, their weapons, their command structure. The council needs to understand how humans fight before we integrate them fully into our defense networks. Velthor nodded. His species, the Krell, had not fought a war in 3,000 years. They had evolved beyond such primitive behavior. But they understood the need to study those who had not. Humans had only joined galactic society 5 years ago, and already they were asking for military contracts and defense positions. The council was curious but cautious. I understand, Velthor said. When do I depart? Immediately. The human vessel is waiting at docking port 7. The journey to the docking port took 20 minutes. Velthor carried only his observation equipment and a small bag of personal items. He did not expect to need much. Human ships were supposed to be cramped and uncomfortable compared to Krell vessels. When he arrived at the Defiant, he was surprised by what he saw. The ship was smaller than he expected, barely 300 meters long. Its hull was scarred with old damage that had been repaired but not polished away. Weapons bristled from every angle. It looked aggressive, like a predator ready to strike. A human male stood at the airlock waiting. He was tall by human standards, with short dark hair and eyes that seemed to measure everything they saw. He wore a dark blue uniform with insignia that marked him as the captain. Observer Velthor? The human asked, extending his hand. Velthor had studied human gestures. He reached out and grasped the hand, shaking it once. The human's grip was firm, almost too firm. Yes, you are Captain Jake Morrison? That's right. Welcome aboard the Defiant. Jake's mouth curved into what humans called a smile, but his eyes remained watchful. Let me show you to your quarters, then we'll give you the tour. The interior of the ship was as cramped as Velthor expected. Corridors were narrow and pipes and cables ran along the walls without any attempt to hide them. Everything looked functional, built for purpose rather than comfort. They passed several crew members who nodded at their captain but stared openly at Velthor. His quarters were small but adequate. A bunk, a desk, a small bathroom. The walls were bare metal. It's not fancy, Jake said, but it's clean and secure. You'll have full access to all non-classified areas of the ship. My crew has been briefed about your mission. Thank you, Captain. When will I meet the senior officers? Right now, if you're ready. They're waiting in the briefing room. Velthor followed Jake through more corridors until they reached a room with a large table. 5 humans sat around it, all watching him with the same measuring look Jake had. Jake made the introductions. This is Lisa Bennett, my tactical officer. A woman with red hair tied back in a tight bun nodded at him. Her eyes were sharp and calculating. Carlos Hayes, chief engineer. A shorter man with dark skin and grease stains on his uniform raised his hand in greeting. Peter Griffin, medical officer. An older man with gray in his hair smiled warmly. He seemed the friendliest of the group. And Amy Sullivan, communications. A young woman with blonde hair gave him a quick wave. Welcome to the Defiant, Lisa said. Her voice was neutral, professional. We understand you're here to observe how we operate. We'll do our best to give you full access. I appreciate your cooperation, Velthor said, taking a seat at the table. I hope my presence will not interfere with your duties. Won't be a problem, Jake said, sitting at the head of the table. We've got patrol duty for the next 2 weeks. Standard border monitoring. Should give you plenty of time to see how we run things. Carlos laughed. Assuming nothing goes wrong. When does anything ever go wrong? Amy said with a grin. The humans all chuckled, sharing some joke that Velthor did not understand. He made a note in his datapad. Human crews seem to have informal relationships even with their commanding officer present. Very different from Krell military structure. For the next 3 days, Velthor observed the crew at their duties. He watched Lisa run tactical drills, saw Carlos maintain the ship's systems with creative solutions that violated standard engineering protocols, and observed Amy managing communications with a casual efficiency that seemed almost careless. Peter kept the small medical bay organized and spent his free time reading human literature. Jake ran the ship with a light touch. He gave orders but also listened to suggestions from his crew. They called him captain on duty but Jake during meals. They argued with him sometimes, debated his decisions but always followed through when he made a final call. It was strange to watch. The humans also asked Velthor questions. They were curious about his species, his world, his reasons for becoming an observer. Peter especially seemed interested in xenobiology and asked detailed questions about Krell physiology. Velthor answered carefully, maintaining professional distance. On the fourth day, everything changed. Velthor was in the observation deck, documenting his notes when the ship's alarm started blaring. It was a harsh, angry sound that made his skin prickle. He grabbed his datapad and hurried to the bridge. The bridge was organized chaos. Every station was occupied and displays showed tactical data streaming in fast. Jake sat in the command chair, his casual demeanor replaced by intense focus. "Report," Jake said. Lisa's fingers flew across her console. "Distress signal from mining colony Delta 7. 3 Zarthun raider ships attacking. Colony defenses are down. They're requesting immediate assistance." Velthor felt his blood chill. The Zarthun were known across the galaxy. They were slavers and killers, a species that preyed on weaker colonies. They were also heavily armed. 3 of their ships would outgun the Defiant easily. "Distance?" Jake asked. 40 minutes at maximum speed, Amy reported. "Other ships in range?" "Negative. The nearest council patrol is 6 hours away." Jake was quiet for 3 seconds. Velthor could see him processing the information, calculating odds. Then he leaned forward in his chair. "Set course for Delta 7, maximum speed. Battle stations." Velthor stepped forward. "Captain Morrison, I must protest. The standard protocol in this situation is to relay the distress call and wait for adequate force. 3 Zarthun vessels against 1 ship is suicide." Jake looked at him. That smile appeared again, the one that did not reach his eyes. "Observer, I appreciate your concern. But there are 800 people on that colony. We're not waiting 6 hours while they get killed or taken as slaves. But the tactical situation is impossible. You will lose. Maybe." Jake turned back to his crew. "Lisa, I want firing solutions ready the moment we drop out of faster than light. Carlos, push the engines as hard as you can. Amy, send a message to the colony. Tell them help is coming." The crew moved with practiced precision. No one questioned the order. No one mentioned the odds. Velthor stood frozen, unable to comprehend what he was witnessing. These humans were about to fly into a battle they could not win, to save people they had never met. "Observer," Jake said, not looking away from the displays. "You might want to strap in. Things are about to get interesting." Velthor stumbled to a seat and secured the safety harness. His hands were shaking. He had been wrong. These were not simple beings following basic military doctrine. These were something else entirely. Something his research had not prepared him for. The ship hummed as the engines pushed them faster. On the display, the countdown to arrival ticked down. 30 minutes, 20, 10, Jake's voice was calm. "All hands, this is the captain. We're going in hot against superior numbers. Do what you do best. Make them regret picking a fight with humans." The crew responded with determination. "Yes, sir." Velthor clutched his datapad and began recording. His initial assessment had been completely wrong. He was not observing a minor species with primitive tactics. He was observing something far more dangerous. He just did not know how dangerous yet. The Defiant dropped out of faster-than-light travel directly into hell. Velthor's display lit up with red threat indicators as 3 Zarthun warships filled the view screen. They were massive, each one twice the size of the Defiant. Their hulls covered in weapon ports that were already firing. "Evasive maneuvers," Jake ordered, his voice steady as the ship shook from near misses. Lisa's hands danced across her console, targeting primary vessel. "They're launching fighters." Velthor watched in horror as the tactical display showed 12 small craft separating from the lead Zarthun ship. The Defiant had no fighters, no support. They were alone against overwhelming force. This was exactly the scenario every military academy taught to avoid. "Carlos, redirect power from life support to shields," Jake said. "Captain, that is unsafe," Velthor protested. "The crew will suffer oxygen deprivation." Carlos grinned as he worked. "We can hold our breath for a while. Can't do much if we're dead, though." The ship lurched to the left as Lisa piloted them through a gap between 2 Zarthun vessels. Weapons fire streaked past them, close enough that Velthor could see the energy trails on the view screen. They should have been hit a dozen times already. Somehow they were not. Firing solution locked, Lisa said. Fire, Jake commanded. The Defiant's main cannons unleashed a barrage at the nearest Zarthun ship. The enemy shields flared but held. The return fire was immediate and devastating. The Defiant shook hard enough that Velthor's harness cut into his chest. Shields at 60%, Amy reported. Hull breach on deck 3, sealing now. Keep us moving, Jake said. He leaned forward in his chair, studying the tactical display like it was a puzzle to solve rather than a death sentence to accept. Peter's voice came over the intercom. Medical bay ready for casualties. Try not to send me too many at once, they were joking. Velthor could not believe it. They were in a battle against superior numbers with no chance of victory, and they were making jokes. His hands recorded everything automatically, but his mind struggled to process what he was seeing. Lisa, use the colony's gravity well, Jake said. Bring us in close to the planet. That will reduce our maneuverability, Lisa replied, but she was already changing course. It will also force them to be more careful with their shots. They want the colony intact for looting. It was brilliant. It was also insane. The Defiant dove toward the planet and the Zarthun ships followed. Their fire became less concentrated, more cautious. They could not risk hitting the colony with stray shots. Now, Jake said. Amy, broadcast our surrender on all channels. Velthor's head snapped up. What? Amy was already transmitting. Zarthun vessels, this is the human ship Defiant. We surrender. Repeat, we surrender. Ceasing fire and lowering shields, the Zarthun fire slowed. Velthor could see on the display that they were repositioning, probably preparing to board the Defiant. Standard procedure when accepting a surrender. Carlos, how's that surprise package coming? Jake asked quietly. 30 seconds. The containment is going to fail loud. Perfect. Lisa, plot a course that takes us between vessels 2 and 3. Maximum speed on my mark. Velthor realized what they were doing. The surrender was a trick. Humans lied during warfare. He had read about this in their history files, but seeing it happen was different. His species considered such deception dishonorable. Humans apparently considered it tactics. Mark, Jake said. Several things happened at once. The Defiant's shields came back online at full power. The engines roared to life, pushing them forward at speeds that made Velthor's stomach turn. And behind them, something ejected from the ship's waste disposal system. What did you launch? Velthor managed to ask. Carlos smiled. Overloaded reactor coolant cells. In about 5 seconds, they're going to explode like a small sun. The explosion was not small. It was massive. The blast wave caught the nearest Zarthun ship and sent it spinning. Its shields overloaded in a cascade of energy. The second ship took damage to its port side. The third ship, the one furthest away, was untouched, but its pilots were clearly shocked by the maneuver. Firing, Lisa said, and the Defiant's weapons poured into the crippled first vessel. This time, with no shields, the damage was real. Atmosphere vented from 3 hull breaches. The ship listed to one side, its engines failing. Target the engines on ship 2, Jake ordered. They were moving fast now, dancing between enemy fire with precision that seemed impossible. Velthor watched Lisa's hands on the controls and realized she was not following any programmed pattern. She was improvising, making decisions faster than any computer could calculate. The second Zarthun ship tried to turn to present its undamaged side, but it was too slow. The Defiant's weapons found their mark. The engines exploded in a cascade of secondary failures. 2 down, Amy reported. The third ship is retreating. Pursuing, Jake said. Captain, no. Velthor found his voice. You have won. Let them escape. There is no tactical advantage to pursuit. Jake looked at him. They came here to kill or enslave 800 people. I'm not letting them get away to try it somewhere else. The Defiant chased the fleeing Zarthun ship. It was faster than them, but Jake had Carlos redirect even more power to the engines. They gained slowly. The enemy ship fired behind itself, desperate shots that Lisa easily avoided. We're in range, Lisa said. Target their faster-than-light drive, Jake ordered. I want them stuck here until a council ship arrives to arrest them. The shots were perfect. The Zarthun ship's drive section exploded in a controlled burst. The vessel was stranded, unable to jump away or fight back effectively. Amy, sent a message to the colony. Tell them they're safe, and contact the nearest council patrol. Tell them we have 3 Zarthun ships ready for pickup. The bridge crew relaxed. Just like that, the battle was over. Carlos restored life support to normal levels. Lisa secured the weapons. Peter reported 3 minor injuries from the hull breach. Nothing serious. They acted like this was routine. Belthor's hands shook as he reviewed his recordings. The battle had lasted 14 minutes. In that time, he had watched humans violate every rule of warfare he knew. They had lied to the enemy. They had used improvised weapons. They had taken risks that should have killed them all. And they had won against odds that his people would have considered mathematically impossible. "Observer, you okay?" Jake asked, noticing his distress. "I need to review my data," Velthor said. His voice sounded strange to his own ears. "Sure, take your time. We'll be here for a few hours coordinating with the colony." Velthor made his way back to his quarters on shaking legs. He sealed the door and sat at his desk, playing back the battle recording frame by frame. His training told him what he had witnessed should not have been possible. The Defiant had been outgunned, outnumbered, and tactically disadvantaged in every measurable way. But humans did not seem to care about measurable advantages. They cared about winning, and they were willing to lie, cheat, and take insane risks to do it. He thought about the surrender trick. His species had rules about warfare, codes of honor that both sides respected. It made conflicts predictable, manageable. Humans apparently had no such limitations. They would do whatever worked. The more he reviewed the footage, the more disturbing details he noticed. Lisa had not just avoided enemy fire randomly. She had predicted where the Zarthun would shoot based on their previous patterns and moved accordingly. Carlos had somehow managed to overload reactor cells without causing a containment breach on the ship itself, a feat of engineering that should require hours of calculation. Jake had made decisions in seconds that would take a Krell commander minutes of consultation with advisors. This was not primitive warfare. This was something evolved for maximum efficiency and minimum predictability. Humans had turned combat into an art form of organized chaos. A chime at his door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he said. Peter entered carrying a medical scanner. "Captain asked me to check on you. That was your first space battle, right?" "Yes, my species has not fought in 3,000 years. Peter nodded, running the scanner over him. "Your stress hormones are elevated, but not dangerously so. That was pretty intense for a first time. How are you feeling?" "Confused. Disturbed. How do your people do this regularly?" Peter smiled, but it was a sad smile. "We've been fighting each other for our entire history. Wars, battles, conflicts over every reason you can imagine. When we reached space, we just brought those skills with us. But you seem so calm about it. You joke during battle. Humor helps us cope with fear. We're scared too, Observer. We just don't let it stop us." Peter left him with instructions to rest. But Velthor could not rest. He sat at his desk and began writing his preliminary report. The words came slowly, carefully. "Humans," he wrote, "do not approach warfare as a necessary evil to be avoided. They approach it as a problem to be solved through any means available. They are creative, adaptable, and willing to sacrifice personal safety for tactical advantage." Initial assessment. Extremely dangerous if provoked. He paused, then added one more line. Request permission to extend observation period. "I do not yet fully understand what I am witnessing. The Galactic Council would want more data, and despite his fear, despite his growing horror at what humans were capable of, Velthor knew he had to continue watching. He just hoped he would survive the experience. The mining colony sent a new message 3 hours after the battle ended. Their main power generator had been damaged in the attack. Life support was failing. They needed immediate evacuation assistance before the atmosphere processors shut down completely. Jake assembled his crew in the briefing room. Velthor attended, his recording equipment capturing everything. He was learning that humans never wasted time between crises. "The colony has 800 people," Jake said, displaying a schematic of the station. "They've got maybe 6 hours of breathable air left. Our shuttle can carry 30 people at a time." Carlos did the math quickly. "That's 27 trips. We don't have time." "Then we get creative," Lisa said, studying the display. "What if we dock the Defiant directly to the station? Use the ship as a temporary life support system while we repair their generator." "The docking collar is damaged on their end," Amy reported. "The Zarthun hit it during the attack." Jake leaned back in his chair, thinking. Velthor watched the process with fascination. The captain's face showed concentration but not panic. After 30 seconds, he nodded. All right, new plan. Carlos, you take a team to the colony's engineering section. See if you can repair the generator. Lisa, you coordinate evacuation of anyone who's critically injured or vulnerable. Peter, set up a triage center in our cargo bay. Amy, I need you managing communications between all teams. What about the structural damage? Peter asked. That station took a beating. Some sections might collapse. We'll be careful, Jake said. Then he turned to Velthor. Observer, you're welcome to join us. Might give you insight into how we handle rescue operations. Velthor hesitated. His assignment was to observe from safety, but he also needed comprehensive data. I will accompany you. 30 minutes later, Velthor found himself in a shuttle approaching the damaged colony. Through the viewport, he could see the devastation. Hull breaches had been sealed with emergency foam, but scorch marks covered half the station. One entire section had been blown away completely. The shuttle docked at an intact airlock. Jake led the team inside, with Velthor following close behind. The interior of the colony was worse than the exterior. Emergency lights cast red shadows across twisted metal. The air smelled of smoke and something chemical that made Velthor's eyes water. A human woman met them at the airlock. She was covered in soot and had a cut across her forehead. Captain Morrison? I'm Helen Price, Colony Administrator. Thank God you're here. Ms. Price, my engineer is going to look at your generator. Where are you injured? Medical Center, Section B, but we've got a problem. She brought up a display on a damaged wall panel. Sections D and E collapsed during the attack. We've got 3 miners trapped down there. They're alive. We're getting signals from their emergency beacons, but we can't reach them. The route is blocked. Jake studied the display. How long do they have? Maybe 2 hours of air in their suits. After that? She did not finish. Show me the blocked route. They moved through the station in 2 groups. Carlos and his engineering team went toward the generator room. Jake, Lisa, and Velthor followed Helen to Section D. The route took them through corridors that groaned under their own weight. Velthor's scanners showed dangerous structural instability everywhere. They reached the collapse site. A massive pile of debris blocked the corridor completely. Metal beams, broken equipment, and shattered wall panels created an impassable barrier. Lisa pulled out a scanner. I'm reading 3 life signs on the other side. About 40 meters away. Can we cut through? Jake asked. Not without bringing the rest of the section down. Helen said, her voice breaking. We tried. Every time we remove something, the structure shifts. Our engineers say it's impossible. Jake was quiet, studying the collapse. Velthor watched him calculate angles and weights, saw his eyes moving across the debris field looking for patterns. This was the same focus the captain had shown during the battle. Nothing's impossible, Jake finally said. It's just complicated. Lisa, scan for the strongest structural points. We're going to tunnel through, but we need to reinforce as we go. Helen shook her head. Captain, I appreciate the intent, but we don't have the equipment or the time. Then we improvise. Observer, you might want to record this. Velthor already had his equipment running. He watched as Jake and Lisa began moving debris piece by careful piece. They did not just remove obstacles. They repositioned them, using broken beams to support weak points, creating a tunnel that reinforced itself as they advanced. It was incredibly dangerous. Several times the structure shifted and Velthor was certain they would be crushed. But Jake seemed to sense the instabilities before they became critical. He would stop, adjust something, and continue forward. How do you know where to place the supports? Velthor asked. Experience, Jake said, not looking away from his work. I grew up in mining colonies like this one. You learn how structures settle, where the stress points are. They had been working for 40 minutes when Amy's voice came over their communicators. Captain, we've got a problem. The damaged section is heating up. Carlos says something in the reactor is starting to melt down. If it goes, the explosion will take out half the station. How long do we have? 30 minutes. Maybe less. Helen grabbed Jake's arm. We need to evacuate now. Leave the trapped miners. We can't save them and everyone else. Jake pulled his arm free. We're not leaving them. Captain, be reasonable. 3 lives versus 800. The math is simple. The math isn't simple, Lisa said, continuing to move debris. Because those 3 people matter. They're counting on us. Velthor stepped forward. Captain Morrison, I must agree with Administrator Price. The logical choice is to evacuate. Continuing this rescue attempt endangers everyone. Jake looked at him. In that moment, Velthor saw something in the captain's eyes that made him understand. This was not about logic. This was about something deeper, something fundamental to what humans were. Observer, I know your species makes decisions based on mathematical optimization. Save the most lives, accept the necessary losses. That's logical. Jake turned back to the debris. But humans don't work that way. We don't leave people behind, ever. Because the moment we do, the moment we start deciding who's worth saving and who isn't, we stop being human. He continued working. Lisa joined him. After a moment, Helen did too, tears streaming down her face. Velthor stood frozen. His logical mind screamed that this was wrong, inefficient, dangerous. But he was watching something that defied his understanding of rational behavior. These humans were risking hundreds of lives to save 3 people they had never met. And they were doing it not despite the odds, but because the odds did not matter to them. 15 minutes, Amy warned. They broke through. The tunnel was barely wide enough for a human to crawl through, reinforced with wreckage that somehow held the weight above it. Jake went first, disappearing into the narrow space. Lisa followed. Velthor positioned himself at the entrance, recording everything. His equipment picked up sounds from inside the tunnel, muffled voices, the scrape of metal on metal. Got them, Jake's voice echoed back. They're weak but alive. Passing the first one back. A human male emerged from the tunnel, his mining suit torn and his face pale. Helen pulled him clear. Then a woman, then another man. All 3 were conscious but exhausted. Jake and Lisa crawled back through just as the entire section shuddered. Time to go, Jake said. Everyone move, they ran. The station groaned around them like a dying creature. Velthor's shorter legs struggled to keep pace with the humans, but Lisa grabbed his arm and practically dragged him along. Behind them, metal screamed as structures failed. They reached the shuttle bay with 2 minutes to spare. Carlos and his team were already there, having been evacuated from the reactor section. The last shuttle launched just as the reactor section exploded in a controlled burst that vented into space. On the Defiance bridge, Velthor watched the colony stabilize. Carlos had managed a temporary fix on the generator before the evacuation. It would hold until a proper repair ship arrived. All 800 people were safe. The 3 trapped miners were in the medical bay with Peter receiving treatment. Jake stood at his command station, looking tired but satisfied. Good work, everyone. Amy, send a report to the council. Let them know the colony is secure. Velthor approached him slowly. Captain, may I ask you something? Sure, those 3 miners. You risked everything for them. Statistically, the probability of success was below 20%. Why? Jake was quiet for a moment. Because they were counting on us. Because someone had to try. Because... He paused, searching for words. Because that's what makes us human. We don't leave our people behind. We don't give up just because the odds are bad. We find a way or we die trying. That is not logical. No, Jake agreed. It's not. But logic isn't everything, observer. Sometimes you need to do what's right instead of what's smart. Velthor returned to his quarters and reviewed the day's recordings. He watched Jake and Lisa tunnel through deadly debris. He listened to Jake's words about not leaving people behind. He analyzed the risks they had taken and the lives they had saved. His preliminary report had called humans dangerous. After today, he realized that was not quite accurate. Humans were not just dangerous. The meeting ended. The holographic images disappeared, leaving Jake and Velthor alone in the conference room. They're doing exactly what you predicted, Jake said. Using us for the dangerous missions. Yes, and you will accept the assignment because that is what humans do. Jake nodded slowly. Yeah, we probably will. Velthor returned to his quarters and completed his final report. He wrote carefully, choosing each word to convey the magnitude of what he had observed. Humanity represents a fundamental paradigm shift in galactic civilization, he wrote. They are a species that evolved through constant warfare, but somehow maintained ideals of honor, sacrifice, and protection of the innocent. They are tactically creative, emotionally driven, and absolutely refusal to accept defeat. I have watched humans lie to enemies, take catastrophic risks, and sacrifice themselves for strangers. I have watched them tunnel through collapsing structures to save 3 trapped miners. I have watched them violate direct orders to protect 4 million civilians. I have watched them inspire other species to be braver than they thought possible. The Council views humans as useful allies. This is a dangerous underestimation. Humans are not allies who will follow orders when convenient. They are beings who will fight for what they believe is right regardless of cost or command structure. My recommendation is this: never give humans a reason to view the Council as unjust. Never oppress species under Council protection. Never allow situations where civilians are abandoned to fate, because if humans decide the Council is wrong, they will oppose it with the same determination they showed at Trevok. And they will not be alone. I watched 15 ships from other species return to battle because humans shamed them into it. Human courage is contagious. Human ideals spread to others. Give humanity an... Velthor sat in the observation bay of the Defiant 3 days after the Battle of Trevok. Through the viewport, he could see the other human ships undergoing repairs at a council station. Crews moved between vessels, sharing supplies and helping with emergency fixes. The humans worked with mechanical efficiency, but Velthor could see the exhaustion in their movements. He had spent those 3 days reviewing every recording from his month-long observation. Hours of footage showing humans at war, humans in crisis, humans facing impossible situations with nothing but determination and improvised solutions. He had filled 6 data cores with observations and was now working on his final report. The door chimed. "Come in," Velthor said. Jake entered, moving stiffly. His injuries from the battle were mostly healed, but Peter had said the captain needed more rest. Humans seem to ignore medical advice frequently. Jake carried 2 containers of what humans called coffee. "Thought you might need this," Jake said, offering 1 container. "I know your species can process caffeine." Velthor accepted it. The gesture was kind, unnecessary, but typically human. They built connections through small acts. "Thank you, Captain." Jake sat down across from him. "How's the report coming?" "It is nearly complete. The Council will not be pleased only because we disobeyed orders. Because I am going to recommend that humanity never be provoked into total warfare." Velthor looked at his data pad. "Your species is the most dangerous I have ever studied, Captain Morrison, and I am not certain the Council understands why." Jake sipped his coffee. "Tell me." Velthor organized his thoughts. After a month of observation, he finally understood what made humans different. Explaining it was harder. "Every species in the Galactic Council approaches warfare logically," Velthor began. "We calculate acceptable losses. We determine when strategic withdrawal is necessary. We preserve our forces because ships and trained personnel are valuable resources that take time to replace. This is rational behavior." "But humans don't do that," Jake said. "No. Humans refuse to accept defeat until they are physically incapable of continuing. You take casualties that my species would consider catastrophic and keep fighting. The battle at Trevok should have ended when your losses exceeded 30%. But you continued. Why?" Jake was quiet for a moment. "Because the mission wasn't complete. There were still people who needed saving. That is not logical. The lives of your crew are valuable. Trading them for strangers is mathematically inefficient." "Maybe," Jake agreed. "But we're not calculators, Observer. We're human. We can't just assign value to lives and make cold decisions about who lives and who dies. Every person matters to us. That miner we pulled from the collapsed section? He mattered. Those Trevokian civilians? They mattered. Our crew who died buying them time? They knew what they were doing and they did it anyway because it was right." Velthor made a note in his datapad. "That is precisely what makes your species so dangerous. You are driven by emotion and abstract concepts rather than logic. You cannot be reliably predicted because you do not follow rational decision trees." "Is that what you're putting in your report?" "Yes. Along with detailed analysis of human tactical adaptability, willingness to employ deception, creative use of available resources, and, most critically, your species' complete inability to accept defeat." Velthor looked up from his pad. "Do you know what will happen when the Council reads this? They'll probably restrict human involvement in military operations. They should, but they will not." Velthor's voice was heavy with certainty. "Because the Council saw what happened at Trevok. They saw other species follow human example. They saw that human determination is contagious. They will want to weaponize that. They will assign human crews to difficult missions, rely on human willingness to sacrifice, and use your people as shock troops." Jake's expression darkened. "We're not cannon fodder. No, you are far more valuable. You are beings who will fight hopeless battles and occasionally win them. The Council will exploit that. And humans, being human, will probably volunteer for it." The captain stood and walked to the viewport. He looked out at the damaged ships. You're probably right. We have a bad habit of taking on the hardest jobs. Someone has to, and we can't stand seeing others suffer if we can do something about it. Velthor saved his notes and stood as well. May I ask you something personal, Captain? Sure. Do you ever regret it? The sacrifices, the risks, the constant fighting? Jake was quiet for a long time. When he spoke, his voice was soft. Every day, I regret every person I've lost, every injury my crew takes, every time we go into battle knowing some of us might not come back. But I don't regret trying to save people. I can live with the cost if it means someone else gets to live. That is what my report will say, that humans value the lives of strangers as much as they value their own, that they will fight for people they have never met, that they cannot be deterred by odds or casualties. Velthor paused. The council will read this and think humans are useful. I want them to read it and understand humans are dangerous. Dangerous to who? To anyone who threatens innocence. To slavers like the Zarthun. To anyone who thinks the strong can prey on the weak without consequence. Velthor met Jake's eyes. Your species has been fighting each other for thousands of years. You have refined warfare into an art form. Now you are bringing those skills to galactic civilization. The council should be terrified. Jake smiled slightly. But they won't be. No, they will be grateful. Until the day comes when humans decide the council itself is wrong about something important. Then they will understand what I tried to warn them about. A chime sounded on Jake's communicator. Amy's voice came through. Captain, Admiral Krentok is requesting a meeting with you and the other human captains. He says it's urgent. On my way. Jake looked at Velthor. Want to observe one more human interaction? If you do not mind. They went to the conference room where the other 7 human captains were gathering via hologram. Admiral Krentok appeared as well, his image showing clear disapproval. Captains, the Admiral began, your actions at Trevok were a severe breach of protocol. You violated direct orders and endangered the entire fleet. I have submitted recommendations for formal disciplinary action against all of you. The human captains listened without reaction. Jake spoke for them. Admiral, with respect, we saved 4 million lives. If following protocol means abandoning civilians to slavers, then protocol needs to change. The Council has procedures for a reason, Captain Morrison. Emotional decisions lead to unnecessary casualties. We took casualties, Jake agreed, but we won. The Trevokians are free. The Zarthun were defeated. And you know what else happened? Half your fleet came back to fight with us. We showed them that running away isn't the only option. The Admiral's image flickered with what might have been anger. You showed them insubordination. We showed them courage, another captain said. Her name was Kate Murphy, and her ship had been one of the most heavily damaged. We showed them that some things are worth fighting for even when the odds are bad. Admiral Krentok was silent for a moment. Then his posture shifted slightly. The Council has reviewed the battle. Despite the protocol violations, the outcome was favorable. No formal charges will be filed. However, you are all being reassigned. To where? Jake asked. A new task force is being formed specifically for high-risk operations. The Council has determined that human tactical flexibility and aggression are valuable assets for difficult missions. You will lead this task force. Consider it both a promotion and a warning. Future insubordination will not be tolerated. Velthor submitted his preliminary report to the Galactic Council 2 weeks after the mining colony rescue. He expected them to take his warning seriously, to classify humans as a species requiring careful monitoring. Instead, he received a dismissive response from the Council Administrator. Your observations are noted but considered exaggerated. Humans are useful allies who have shown courage and tactical innovation. They will be integrated into joint defense operations as planned. Continue your assignment. The message filled him with dread. The Council did not understand. They saw humans as brave and creative. They did not see what Velthor saw, the fundamental difference that made humans so dangerous. They were not just willing to fight. They were willing to die for ideas and strangers. That made them unpredictable in ways the Council could not manage. He requested reassignment anyway. The Council denied it. They ordered him to continue observations, specifically during joint military operations. They wanted data on how humans worked with other species in combat situations. 3 days later, the Defiant received new orders. They were being assigned to a joint task force responding to a major Zarthun invasion. The target was a council member world called Trevok. home to 4 million Travokians, a peaceful species similar to the Krell. The Zarthun had sent 30 warships to enslave the population. The task force assembled at a staging point near Trivok. Velthor watched from the Defiance observation deck as ships from a dozen species gathered. There were Krell vessels with their elegant designs, Gorvan battleships built like floating fortresses, and sleek Piran cruisers. The humans contributed 8 ships, including the Defiant. They were outnumbered by the other species but treated as equals in the command structure. The task force commander was Admiral Krentok, a Krell like Velthor. The admiral gave a briefing via holoconference that all ships attended. Jake brought Velthor to the Defiance bridge for the meeting. Admiral Krentok's image appeared above the tactical display. Captains, we face a serious situation. 30 Zarthun vessels currently orbit Trevok. They have already begun landing troops to capture population centers. Our force numbers 40 ships. We have numerical advantage, but our intelligence suggests the Zarthun have fortified positions. Jake leaned forward. Admiral, what's the evacuation status? There are too many civilians to evacuate quickly. The Travokians are not a military species. They have limited transport capability. So we need to break the Zarthun blockade and hold long enough for evacuations to complete, Lisa said, studying the tactical data. Correct, the Admiral replied. However, projections show significant casualties across our fleet. I am implementing standard council protocol. We will engage the enemy, assess their strength, and if losses exceed 30%, we will execute strategic withdrawal and request additional forces. Velthor saw Jake's expression change. The captain's jaw tightened. Around him, his crew exchanged glances. Admiral, Jake said carefully, if we withdraw at 30% casualties, the Zarthun will have time to secure the planet. They'll take millions of slaves. That is unfortunate, Captain Morrison, but acceptable losses must be calculated against fleet preservation. We cannot lose 40 ships to save one world. Yes, sir, Jake said, but his tone was cold. The briefing ended. As the other ship's commanders signed off, Jake sat in his command chair staring at the tactical display. His crew was silent, watching him. Captain, Lisa finally said. Prep the ship for combat, Jake said. Standard loadout, but add the experimental weapons Carlos has been working on. Those haven't been tested, Carlos protested weakly. They will be now. Velthor approached. Captain Morrison, you are not planning to disobey the Admiral's orders, are you? Jake looked at him. Observer, I'm going to follow orders right up until those orders get 4 million people enslaved. Then we're going to have a problem. The task force jumped to Trivok 8 hours later. The battle began immediately. Zarthun ships opened fire the moment the Council fleet appeared. The tactical display lit up with weapons fire, shield impacts, and maneuvering vessels. Admiral Krentok directed the battle from his flagship, positioning ships in textbook formations. It was efficient and logical. It was also failing. The Zarthun had indeed fortified their positions. They had set up weapon platforms on Trevok's moons and stationed their strongest ships in defensive positions around the planet. Velthor watched the casualty reports come in. 3 ships lost in the first 20 minutes. 5 more damaged and withdrawing. The humans fought aggressively, pushing deeper into Zarthun lines than the other species, but even they were taking heavy fire. Fleet casualties at 18%, Amy reported. Jake studied the battle. They're playing defensive. They don't need to destroy us. Just hold us off until they finish loading civilians onto their slave ships. On the tactical display, Velthor could see several large Zarthun transports descending to Trevok's surface. Every minute the battle continued. More Travokians were being captured. Fleet casualties at 25%, Amy said 30 minutes later. Admiral Krentok's voice came over the fleet channel. All ships maintain current positions. Prepare for possible withdrawal on my command. Jake's hands gripped his armrests. Lisa looked at him. Carlos stopped his repairs. Peter's voice came from medical bay where he was treating wounded crew from a hull breach. Captain, tell me we're not leaving. Fleet casualties at 31%, Amy announced. All ships, this is Admiral Krentok. Execute strategic withdrawal. Jump to Rally Point Delta. Repeat, withdraw immediately. The council ships began breaking off. Velthor watched them turn away from the battle, activating their faster-than-light drives. It was the logical choice. They had met the threshold for acceptable losses, Additional fighting would only waste more lives, but the human ships were not moving. Captain Morrison. The Admiral's voice was sharp now. You have your orders. Withdraw. Jake stood up. Negative, Admiral. We're staying. That is a direct violation of command structure. You will comply or face court-martial. Then I'll see you at the court-martial, sir. All human ships, this is Captain Morrison. The Council is withdrawing, but we're not. We're going to buy time for the Trevokians to evacuate. Anyone who wants to follow the Admiral's orders, no hard feelings. But I'm staying. The other 7 human captains responded immediately. Right behind you. Jake, we're with you. Let's show these slavers what happens when they pick on civilians. Velthor felt his world shift. He had just watched 8 human ships commit mutiny against the Galactic Council. They had violated direct orders from a superior officer. They had chosen to fight a hopeless battle rather than follow protocol. You are all insane, Velthor whispered. Jake heard him. Maybe, but we're not leaving those people to die. Lisa, get me a firing solution on that command ship. Amy, broadcast to the Trevokians. Tell them to start evacuating now. Every ship they've got. We'll hold the line. For how long? Lisa asked. As long as it takes. The 8 human ships charged into the Zarthun fleet. Velthor watched in horror and awe as they abandoned all defensive tactics and went on pure offense. They did not try to preserve themselves. They tried to cause maximum damage to delay the enemy. The Defiant took a direct hit that dropped shields to 40%. Carlos rerouted power from weapons to engines, then back to weapons, constantly adapting. Lisa piloted through enemy formations with maneuvers that made Velthor's stomach revolt. Peter worked in medical bay treating casualties as they came in, his hands steady even as the ship shook around him. And then something unexpected happened. 3 Krell ships broke away from the withdrawing fleet and returned to the fight. This is Captain Velnor of the Krell vessel Harmony, a voice said over the comms. The humans are right. We should not abandon these people. My ship stands with yours. This is Captain Thorne of the Gorvan battleship Immovable. Grovans do not flee when allies fight. We return. One by one, ships from the task force came back. Not all of them, but enough. 15 ships joined the 8 human vessels, 23 total against 30 Zarthun warships. Admiral Krentok's voice was cold. All vessels that have returned, you are in violation of direct orders. You will answer for this. Jake's response was broadcast on all channels. Then we'll answer together, Admiral. In the meantime, we have work to do. The battle intensified. Velthor recorded everything, but his hands shook so badly he could barely hold his equipment. He watched the Defiant take damage that should have destroyed them. He saw Peter Griffin working in a medical bay that had lost half its life support, treating casualties while wearing an emergency breathing mask. He watched Lisa Bennett pilot with one arm in a sling after a console explosion injured her. He saw Carlos Hayes manually holding together a power conduit that should have been sealed with proper tools. The human ship Spirit was destroyed defending a Trevokian evacuation transport. All hands lost. The captain's last words were a joke about buying time being expensive. The human ship Courage took critical damage to its engines and could not maneuver. Instead of abandoning ship, the crew used their last functioning weapon to target a Zarthun ammunition depot on one of the moons. The explosion destroyed 3 enemy ships. Everyone on Courage died in the blast. Velthor watched humans die. He watched them sacrifice themselves,